Everybody, thank you very much for joining us on our webinar this morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. We recognize that all of you have a very busy schedule, and I want to respect your schedule. Thanks for joining us. I think we have a great presentation for you today. What is WAN optimization, and is it right for you? I'm going to hand things over to my presenters in about 45 seconds, but I just want to cover off a couple housekeeping issues first. Those of you who are attending to learn about WAN optimization, great. Those of you who would like to possibly win the iPad, what I'd like you to know is that you must be present to win at the end of the session, from which point we will draw a name of one of our participants who is visible in our ReadyTalk instance. So you must be logged in to ReadyTalk to be eligible to win the iPad, which we will do at the end of the session today. If you're not logged in to ReadyTalk and you're only just dialing in, you can go to readytalk.com and use the access code 5641744. We have muted all participants today just to avoid any interruptions. We'll go through this presentation in probably 40 to 45 minutes, leaving 15 minutes for Q&A. I'd like to encourage each and every one of you to submit questions throughout the presentation as you have them. We'll log each and every one of those and try and respond to those in the order in which they're received at the end of the session, and those that we can't get to if time to the session. In addition, in case you're wondering, we are recording this presentation. We will make a recorded version of this presentation available to all participants shortly after conducting this webinar today. I expect that email early next week. We very much appreciate you joining us today, and we're going to get things started. I'll pass things over to our presenters after a quick introduction. We've got Rod Parker, one of our sales network engineers here at Alaska Communications, and Woody Wicks, who's the channel sales manager at Riverbed. Our two organizations partner together to deliver solutions for our customers like this. And with that, I'll hand things over to Rod. Thanks very much, Rod. Take it away.
Very good. Welcome, everyone. We're glad you could be with us this morning. Is WAN optimization right for you? That is the big question. So what we're going to do is go through this presentation here and questions that come up. What are the challenges that we have in Alaska? Alaska is unique to the rest of the country, as you all know. As far as our bush communities and where a lot of our resources are, we have challenges in providing telecommunication services to a lot of places. What can we do to solve the problem? Can WAN optimization help us in solving that problem? And Woody will get into who is Riverbed, the Riverbed solution, and is the investment in Riverbed worth it? And then we'll close out with questions. What challenges face Alaska? Well, the geographic isolation, as I mentioned, is the number one. We have a lot of bush communities who rely on telecommunications for medical, educational, and other services that need bandwidth. And in this day and age when bandwidth is becoming more and more important because of the multimedia facet of voice, video, and data over telecommunications facilities, the demand is much greater. And as you know, satellite, those of you who experienced the satellite experience, that round trip up 25,000 miles up and 25,000 miles back adds a little bit of delay in the whole transmitting of data and voice. We have limited bandwidth each of those locations. Satellite typically is in less than 1 meg up to maybe 3 meg in most of the smaller instances. We have a need to control WAN traffic as far as that, and when we have those small bandwidths, what is utilizing the bandwidth? If we have video and voice on it, we want to protect that video and voice from other data using up the bandwidth. And how can we deploy WAN-based applications and how can we speed up those processes such as Microsoft Exchange, PowerPoint, SharePoint, Oracle, and others. And lastly, if we are involved heavily, especially in a multimedia facet of telecommunications, where we're relying on those resources, when the network is down, our business is down. So we will cover some more of these. We'll go into the next slide here. Do you experience slow applications or have users complain about latency? If you go ahead and submit that response to that question, we'll tally it up here on our end. So we see a result here as you're voting. Do you experience slow applications, or have users complain about latency? Yeah, nobody has said no so far, as you noticed. So far we have 20% and 80% sometimes, and yes, always. Just a few more seconds here, then we'll move on. So basically what we're looking here is that all of us experience latency in our telecommunications some of the times, and 80% all of the time. So it definitely is an issue. So why do WAN optimization? Applications are performing poorly across the WAN. Multiple applications demand more bandwidth than is available. Servers reside in branches but belong in the data center, especially when we have high latency and low bandwidth capabilities. We'll often put servers in different locations to facilitate access times to the users. So that's an issue. Replicating large amounts of data between data centers. If we have two locations that we have servers and are doing backup, what kind of difficulties do we run into in backing up that data from one source, one location to another? So what do we do to solve these problems? The first one, and this is the one that's been around since we've been in telecommunications, that is increase the bandwidth between the sites. And usually that has been in the past the only choice available. And it still may be the best choice when we're in a MAN or intercity type network where it's easily increasing the bandwidth at inexpensive, with less expense. And so that would be the best method of addressing the situation. The second way, and the newest way in the last 5 or 6 years has come to the market, is deploying WAN optimization on an existing network. This is best for WAN links between cities, states, especially in situations where we have high latency. The rule of thumb is to consider WAN optimization when you have over 20 milliseconds, 20 thousandths of a second of delay. That's a round trip delay for a packet to go to the end and back to the source. The WAN optimization has the capability to virtually eliminate the impact of latency in the WAN so that the WAN experience feels like a LAN. Now, how can WAN optimization help you? By definition, WAN optimization products seek to accelerate a broad range of applications accessed by distributed enterprise users via eliminating redundant transmissions, staging data in local caches, compressing and prioritizing data, and streamlining chatty protocols such as SIFs. WAN optimization also helps avoid packet delivery issues common in shared WAN environments like MPLS and Internet and VPNs. When should you use it? I use WAN optimization. You have remote locations networked to your local data centers. Any WAN will do, and this is a significant thing in that WAN optimization will work whether it's a point-to-point T1, an MPLS circuit, an IPsec VPN circuit, whether it be frame relay, ATM, satellite, or whatever. The whole idea is here, whatever the circuit is, if it's a high latency type circuit, then WAN optimization is viable. So the further away the remote site is from, say, the data center or the headquarters site or the server site, the greater the impact. Applications are performing poorly across the WAN because of that latency, so it obviously is a benefit in that manner as well. Multiple applications depending on more bandwidth than you have, and that's very common, especially in WAN higher cost circuits. What we try to pump over the WAN is usually much more than the WAN bandwidth is designed for. And the fact that servers reside in branches to facilitate the host experience, so we distribute the servers oftentimes so that the WAN isn't slowing down the host experience. So optimization of the WAN allows us to bring those servers back to a common server farm or data center. At this time, I'm going to turn the time over to Woody with Riverbed to go forward with this part of the presentation.
Thank you, Rod, and thanks everybody for your time today, and all the folks at Elastic Communications that have been helping get all this put together. Again, I am Woody Wicks. I am a channel manager at Riverbed, And my responsibility is working with a lot of our regional and global partners in the Western region to enable them and get them up to speed and partnered with Riverbed, and Alaska Communications has done a great job up there. So I've been with Riverbed for about 7 years, and I started about the third quarter into shipping product, and I've seen a lot of evolution happen in WAN optimization and in this market, and it's really exciting. When I first started, we were working with a lot of customers that had no idea this kind of technology existed. And a lot of the first folks that I spoke to were in the architecture and engineering arena. And the issue that a lot of these folks had, and some of them have today, is moving large CAD files, moving large design files over the WAN. Gensler, you can see the quote there from Bruce Bartoff. Gensler was one of the first companies that we approached, and one of the challenges they faced was the expense that was associated with some of the large projects that they were working on. And at the time, they were doing a project in Puerto Rico, and they had 16 architects in Puerto Rico working on one project. And the reason why they were all there is because there were large files they had to collaborate on, and there was no other way to get them around. I mean, they could be in different locations. They could FedEx the files back and forth. And we approached them and we said, well, what if you had the ability to collaborate over the WAN with these huge files and not have to be on site? And they said, well, if you can make that happen, there's no reason why we wouldn't do it. And they were one of our first beta customers. They did an eval. They put the technology in, and it worked. And almost instantaneously, their business transformed. And they realized that not only do they not have to put all these architects in Puerto Rico, but at the time they also had their major offices in San Francisco and New York, Chicago, LA, places like that. They also realized that now, because they could collaborate over the WAN, they could be creative about where their architects were and where their offices were around the world. And so when I hear this quote and I know the story behind it, it's true. I mean, the three technologies that had impacted Bruce's career were the email, the web, and Riverbed. And I think at the time it might have sounded a little cheesy to me, but going back over 7 years and all the customers that we've helped, it really is a major game changer for a lot of these guys. And so what I'd like to do is tie in some of my experience with Riverbed with some of the challenges that Rod had mentioned, and explain how the technology works and how it solves these problems and what sets it apart from some of the other alternatives out there. And so who is Riverbed? Sorry, the slides are going a little bit slow here. So who is Riverbed? There's three things that we want to help our customers do. And the first is to understand what's happening in the network. So what pain do you have in the network? Are applications performing poorly? Where's the potential? Where can you deploy WAN optimization to help your network perform better? The second piece of it is optimizing. And when we talk about optimizing the WAN, we're talking about optimizing traffic to remote offices, to mobile workers, to data centers, to the public and private cloud. Earlier this week, we even announced a technology that would help accelerate traffic to SaaS applications like Salesforce.com and Google Docs and Office 365. So we really want to go wherever you're going to be and make sure there's one consistent platform to do that optimization. And when you start tying these things together and you make your network perform, your WAN perform like it's a LAN, it helps you consolidate. And there's no reason to have servers spread all over the network if it's performing like a LAN. And again, we'll go into how that's going to work. And so, earlier I talked about the adoption of our technology early on. And early on it was with a lot of architecture, engineering, a lot of law firms. It was folks that were moving a lot of big files over the WAN. And thankfully for us, the technology has worked really well. It scales really well. And our customers have really enjoyed telling their peers at other places about their experience. And so you can see the quote from Network World, 97% most recommended technology in this space, and also the customer acquisition growth. And you can see that through the years. We didn't put last year's numbers on, but we're currently over 15,000 customers. We are close to 200,000 appliances deployed globally. And we just continue to adopt new customers and put more technology out there. And the reason is it still works today, and it's solving that fundamental problem of accelerating that WAN traffic. In terms of market share, there's a lot of different companies that play in the space, and a lot of folks that claim to do WAN optimization. And there's a lot of different approaches. You can do caching, you can do compression, you can accelerate a specific protocol. The reason why Riverbed has over 50% market share is because we want to address each of those issues that create that WAN optimization performance problem, and we solve those problems simultaneously. We take an application approach to the way we do it, which is what I'll go into. And you can see some of the other competitors on here, other companies that are in the market. Cisco's got a little over 20% market share, largely because they've got an install base, and they sell to a lot of their customers that don't get the opportunity to speak with us. And there's some folks in the single-digit percentage in terms of market share, which have which are addressing one piece of the market, but again, not looking at that entire picture of WAN optimization. So what is the Riverbed solution? Why do we have this incredible story, this growth, market share? It's because we do several different things, as I mentioned before, simultaneously. First of all, we dedupe data that's going across the WAN, and simply that's removing redundant data. If a piece of data goes from point A to point B, we will identify it, tag it, index it, and if we see it again, we don't have to send it. We accelerate network and application protocols, and not just generically accelerating TCP, but we go into each and every, not each and every, but many different specific applications, and we put intelligence around it to make those go faster. We measure and optimize performance. So when you put in your WAN optimization devices, called our STEELHEAD product, you can actually run reports, and you can see what the data reduction looks like, and you can see how applications are performing better. And then, again, it's consistently going to improve your consolidation. And at the very end, Rod will go into what we do to further consolidation by using the STEELHEAD appliances. So what does Riverbed do? Historically, we've built the business selling an appliance, and as I mentioned, it's called a STEELHEAD. And we want to make your WAN feel like a WAN. Sorry. Our tagline is make 3,000 miles feel like 30 feet. And so it's an appliance. It sits between the switch and the router. You need to put one at every point of the network where you want to see the optimization. And today we have many different flavors of that above and beyond the appliance. We have the mobile version, virtual, cloud, etc. But what we want to do is we want to do three things: accelerate applications to branch and mobile workers, cut bandwidth usage by 60 to 95%, and eliminate the constraints of distance. And what we were discussing earlier is the Alaska's environment and the remote offices, and there's high latency and there's limited bandwidth. And so how do you address those products? Or address those problems? So if you think about applications and how they were designed, specifically by Microsoft, they were designed to run over a LAN. Nobody had the WAN involved when they designed these applications, and you can see that they perform extremely well going over a local area network. When you move them to the wide area network, they get considerably slower. And the reason being is you're introducing less bandwidth and you're introducing latency. And so you can see it's getting anywhere from 25 times to 200 times slower for the exact same application just because you're moving it over the wide area network. So we'll stop for a second and do another poll question. And while you're answering this, I should add too, if you have any questions, I know you're all muted, please type them in the chat box and we'll do our best to address them at the end of the presentation. Okay, and there's good responses. So it looks like we have a pretty good mix between a couple, 2 to 3 offices, and a bulk of you have over 4 locations. And somebody has 1 location. There's even some things that we can do for 1 location in certain circumstances. So I'll give it a second. But it looks like we have a decent number of responses on this one. So excellent. So if you add these 2 poll questions together, you can see that most of you have issues with performance over the WAN, you have issues with latency, and you have multiple, I'm sorry, this thing is skipping ahead on me, and you have multiple offices. So why do applications perform poorly over the WAN? As I mentioned earlier, there's a bandwidth constraint. And this is a pretty simple one to address. So if you had, bandwidth was free and bandwidth was your issue, all you'd have to do is add more bandwidth and this problem would get solved immediately. The issue is there is an expense to bandwidth. And the other problem is bandwidth doesn't always solve the issue. And most of the time, it isn't bandwidth that's the issue. It's the chattiness of applications. And I'll go into explaining what chattiness is and how you solve that problem. The third piece of it is high latency. And being at Riverbed for so long, we realize and we understand that there's no way that you can deal with latency. You can't, in terms of latency is the speed of light, and you can't go faster than the speed of light. So how do you make something go faster than the speed of light? And the only way to do it is to not take that trip, and I'll show you how we figured out how to do that. And so if you're looking into, if you look at latency and what it is and what's behind this problem, it's the amount of time, it's a round trip time. So a limitation of latency is there's only so much data that you can put in each packet, and it can only travel as fast as the speed of light. So if you have that packet full and you're going as fast as you can go, you can add all the bandwidth in the world that you want, but it's not going to help an application go any faster because all those round trips have to take place, and again, you can't go faster than the speed of light. And so what Riverbed does, as I mentioned before, is, and I'll go into each one of these right now and how it works, is again, we deduplicate that data over the WAN. We optimize TCP, and what I mean by that is there's a limitation of that TCP window, and let's say it's 64K is the max that you can pack in each one of those trips. Well, if you think about TCP and each one of those packets being a school bus, and you've got 50 students in there, what we're able to do instead of transporting those 50 students back and forth is we can make each one of those students represent 5,000 other students. And then we're sending that back and forth, and so we're making that more efficient. And then finally, in terms of the application latency or the chattiness, there's all these round trips that go back and forth over the WAN. We've figured out a way to reduce those round trips so they don't have to happen over the wide area network. And so the first piece of it is the data deduplication. And this slide is generally a build. We have it in a PDF, so I'll walk you through it. But if you start at the right side, if you start at the branch, and let's say that you're going to access a 10 meg file from a server on the other side. So the request goes directly to the server on the other end, and it'll pass through the steelhead on each side and get delivered to you. Let's say that you just put in brand new steelheads today and it hasn't seen any of this data before. The very first time that request goes over, the only thing we can really do is compress that data. And we will make it 30 or 40% faster. But more importantly, when it passes through each one of these steelheads, it gets indexed. So we've got, let's say, that 10 meg file. Sorry, let me get my, my marker back up here. Oh, there we go. So let's say we've got this 10 meg file here. When it goes through the steelhead, we're going to break that file into data segments. And let's say we break it into 15 segments, and we'll label them 1 through 15. And so, 1 and then 15 at the end here. And so we'll store those segments, that data, on each of the steelheads. When a user later on goes to request that same document, as it pulls through, it'll match. It'll do that pattern matching for all those segments, and it'll realize, I already have the data for 1 through 15 on the other steelhead, so instead of sending that whole document, I'm just going to send those reference pointers, and I'm going to rebuild it on the other end. And so the reason why I like to break it out and explain the segments is we're not a file cache, and a lot of people confuse us with what some other vendors do and other approaches to WAN optimization. And what that means is, let's say a user a month later goes to get another 10 meg file, and it's completely different, but the logo is the same. So when that file goes through, maybe 14 of those 15 segments it hasn't seen before, it'll send those over, but that one, which is the logo, it has seen, it'll make that match and it'll go over. So as you begin to build that data store and there's more traffic going through it, you're going to get more and more matches, and it's happening at the bit level. And so what that means is you will get a 60 to 95% reduction on most of your WAN traffic, just because so much of that data that you have going back and forth is redundant, especially when you're looking at it at a bit level. For example, if you took SnapMirror and you ran it through two steelheads, you're going to get close to a 98 or 99% data reduction, just because you've got so much of that redundant traffic and a lot of the backup and the replication that you're doing. The second piece of it is the transport streamlining. And if you can think of that window, that school bus analogy, instead of, and let's go to the 10 meg file that you're trying to get, you go and request that 10 meg file, and your request goes from you to the server. When you go to request that file, there's only so much data that you can pack in that window. So you'll go, you'll request it, you'll bring it back over, there's an acknowledgement, I got it, it'll send the next round trip, and so on and so forth until you've delivered all that content. So instead of packing that window with data, we're packing it with those references that I mentioned on the slide before. You're making that round, each one of those trips that much more effective. And so you'll reduce the amount of round trips just because you've reduced the amount of data that's going back and forth. And so these two things before, we're talking about data reduction. This is really important for WAN optimization. It's also something that most vendors out there are going to do. Everybody's going to do some flavor of data dedupe or data reduction or compression or whatever you want to call it. We do it better because we are going at that bit level. And when you compare Riverbed to other alternatives, you're always going to see a better data reduction. You're always going to see better numbers. However, the number one reason why people buy WAN optimization is because they get complaints from users about poor application performance. And as we saw from the poll, there's issues with performance, you have latency, you have multiple offices. This is going to do a decent job at solving part of that problem, but in order to fully solve the problem, you have to deal with the application protocol inefficiencies. This is why Riverbed is in business today. This is why we have over 50% market share, and we do something comprehensively that nobody else out there does. So you can see these round trips, this chattiness that's going back and forth here. And so again, the request goes from the user. I'm going to pull up a marker here again. So it goes from the user, it goes over, there's an acknowledgement, I received it, send another one, there's an acknowledgement, and it's going back and forth over the WAN. And that's happening every time you're using an application. When you move point A to point B further away from each other, when you increase that latency, the more painful that that's going to get. And so what do we do to address that problem? The way that we approach it is instead of having those round trips go over the WAN, we figured out how to do it locally. So the request is always going to go directly to the server, but instead of all those round trips going back and forth over the WAN, we localize it. Right between that server and the server-side steelhead, there's virtually no latency, and it happens in seconds, milliseconds. And then we'll package that into one round trip or fewer round trips, and it gets rebuilt on the other side. And so when you combine this, when you're reducing the number of round trips, you're reducing the payload, you're reducing the amount of redundant data that's going back and forth, that's how you create a LAN-like experience over your WAN. And so what applications do we do that with? We've got literally hundreds of developers at Riverbed, and all we're working on are applications and how can we make them more efficient. So it's the common applications that you use every day. CIFS, MAPI, your Exchange, Lotus Notes, HTTP, a variety of different encrypted types of traffic. And in some cases, we're so far ahead in our development of doing these application optimizations, we're waiting for a lot of our vendor partners to come out with the next version so we can optimize it. And if you compare Riverbed and the optimizations that we do for those different applications, and you can see on the left we've got SMB, we've got Macintosh CIFS, encrypted MAPI, SSL, Lotus Notes. I mean, the list goes on and on. Even stream splitting is something that we do at the very bottom. When you compare that to a competitor, in this example I took Silver Peak, they have one compared to all this stuff that we're doing. And the reason why I want to show this is most other vendors, or when people talk about what they do for WAN optimization, they are going to say they do exactly what Riverbed does. And to an extent, they're telling the truth. They are going to provide optimization for a lot of these different applications, but they're not addressing that chattiness. What they're doing is they're just reducing the payload. And when you reduce the payload, those complaints are still going to come in from the remote users that it's slow. And so what we're doing is orders of magnitude beyond what's happening out there with other folks in the market. Switching gears a little bit, and then I want to turn it over back over to Rod. Once you have deployed your WAN optimization, your Steelhead boxes in the network, the first thing you want to do is you want to go in and see how it's performing. And we make a lot of bold claims. And so anytime you want to evaluate our technology, we'll send you units. And we have a very liberal evaluation product. We want you to try it out. We want you to make sure it's working in your network before you purchase it. But in this example, you can see that there was, and let me pull up my marker again. You can see the different application protocols that we're tracking here. And then you can see the data reduction over here. In this example, 321 meg was requested, and 76.7 actually went over the WAN. So you can see the reduction. Everybody's network is going to be different. So if you put these boxes in, you pull up the screenshot, you'll get a very good idea of what the data reduction looks like in your environment. You can also look at the application chattiness and the reduction in traffic that you're going to see there. So with that, I will turn it over to Rod, and he's going to walk through more of the consolidation piece of Riverbed that I talked about.
You bet. And let me change slides here real quick. Okay. What I want to talk about now is the Riverbed Services Platform. This is something that we're using at Alaska Communications. We have a number of, I'll get into the mobility client software here in a few minutes, but we have a number of our folks that use this platform. And I'll show you how as we go into this. Basically, most of you have heard of VMware, virtual machineware. We think of a server as being an individual box that has an operating system on it, and then you have clients that access that server. And in the VM world, the virtual machine world, we have the capability of putting multiple operating systems or even redundancy of the same operating systems for different applications on one computer, so to speak. Well, Riverbed has integrated that concept into the Riverbed Steelheads as well. Each one of these Steelheads has a hard drive and is basically a computer, and it can run instances of VMware. And so we have a virtualized environment where we can run, it shows like 5 different applications there. We can run Windows Server with DHCP servers, Active Directory, DNS servers, that type of thing can all be run in a server environment right on the Riverbed appliance and be optimized at the same time. Going to the next slide. And so here we show a situation that would be a typical environment where you have a Riverbed at the remote site and one at the data center or where your server farm is or headquarters. And then you might have some mobile users out there that have software on their laptops that allow them to optimize as well. And so up on the upper left side there, you see they have DNS servers, Active Directory, and a print server. And with the Steelheads, we're capable of putting that all together and putting those servers on that Steelhead device so that you don't have to have independent devices out there. And you can remotely access those devices just by an SSL login into the box and be able to manage each one of those servers in that environment. And so this provides this virtualized edge service. It brings it all into one device, easily managed, and all of it is optimized. Going on to the next slide. And so here you see this environment where we just have the one server. So you don't have all the other individual servers at the remote sites.
And Rod, can I add one thing to what you mentioned? If you go back a slide. There was a question in the chat box about Steelhead EX and Granite.
Right.
About 2 weeks ago, we released new lines of Steelheads. There's the CX and the EX, and the CX is the traditional Steelhead, what we've our core product, and then EX, what we've done is we've taken this concept of the services platform and we've extended it to storage. And so the idea is to really help you complete the consolidation at the branch. And we've always done great with the DNS, DHCP, print, those types of things, but we've never been able to address storage. And with Granite, what you're able to do is you're able to essentially decouple the storage from the compute at the branch. And it enables you to take that branch storage, and right now it's iSCSI, and put it back into the data center. And you essentially communicate through Granite or through the Steelhead instead of doing your storage locally and over the WAN. If anybody has additional questions or wants to see that in more detail, let the folks at ACS know, and we can set up a discussion to really go into that. Thanks, Ron.
Very good. Thanks, Woody. Appreciate that. Going on the next slide here. So basically what we come up with is we've shown you what we can do with devices at each end. Now we get into the STEELHEAD mobility capabilities. And what this means is that we can put a piece of software on your laptop, and through an IPsec VPN access through the internet, that laptop becomes like a STEELHEAD appliance and talks to the STEELHEAD mobile controller. The STEELHEAD mobile controller basically carries the licenses, and they're purchased in a group of 10. So say if you bought 40 licenses, that means you could have 100 laptops out there with STEELHEAD mobility on it. It just means that at any given time, only 40 laptops could be optimized into the intranet back to your data center or headquarters. And so, so there's a degree of efficiencies there, and what that provides is another aspect, that STEELHEAD mobility controller, it's a device, but also it can be set up, as we have done at ACS, is on the Riverbed STEELHEAD in the virtual environment. We can put a software mobile controller software literally on the STEELHEAD itself, so that you don't have to have a separate device. And we've had great experiences with it in the sense that when we work remotely, when we're traveling, to log in, where it might have taken 20 minutes to download something, now it takes like a minute or two, or in access to at times if I work from home on the weekends, that kind of thing, getting into Microsoft Exchange or email and into SharePoint, those types of things are almost like being on the LAN. Sometimes I have some limitations with my local internet, but the experience is like being in the office, and it's amazing the difference that it makes. And it works, and I've used this with, I see there's a question about the ACS MiFi. It works excellent with it. It makes the experience much more pleasurable, where you feel like you're in a LAN environment when you're using a wireless type connectivity, and the MiFi doing that. It definitely is an asset. So basically what you get when you put all this together, as you look at the overall solution here, we have in the middle on the left, we have the mobile workers that can have the Riverbed STEELHEAD software on their laptops. We have the branch offices where we can put a device. The rule of thumb usually is that if you have 3, 4 more computers at a remote site, it's better to go with a physical appliance, a STEELHEAD appliance for everyone to connect into. And obviously for the traveling folks, it works best to have the software. And then if you're replicating between data centers or to the cloud, or if you're back to your own private data center, where you're using software like SnapMirror, the efficiencies that the Riverbed bring greatly enhance the overall experience. So with that, is the investment in Riverbed's worth it? So let's take a look at a slide here. Obviously, there's an initial CapEx investment, and we show this here in the initial deployment. This is just a number picked up that was selected. And ACS is here to help with that in the sense that we offer a way of amortizing that initial CapEx investment out. But what this graph shows is that if you were to increase bandwidth to be able to establish the same experience, what you get over year in bandwidth savings costs gives you a net benefit over a payback over 6 to 9 months, with 6.9 months payback. But savings of about $150,000 if you were to increase bandwidth to have the same experience that the STEELHEAD will give you, and so you can see how it will pay for itself in over a 3-year period. So, past performance, some of the companies that we've been involved with, obviously the school districts in Alaska are interested in this type of thing. One of them is like Kenai Peninsula Borough School District, where they have schools like at Port Graham and Nanwalek. These are satellite-fed schools that had, when they came online satellite-wise, the experience when you have 20 students trying to get on the internet was very painful. And so with the implementation of the STEELHEADs, we put a STEELHEAD at KPBSD's main office and then remote ones at each of the two satellite-fed schools, and it made the experience substantially better and made it where it was feasible to do distance learning. And with distance learning, you have the capability of bringing in the multimedia facets of virtual blackboards and those types of things that enhance the whole learning experience. Another one has been SITKA Community Hospital. They had a number of T1 lines, and they kept growing. And they had, with hospitals, they have the radiology groups. When someone comes in and has a CT scan done, there's just a boatload of images that have to be transmitted to somewhere for them to evaluate them. And so what they found was it was very painful in sending all these images out to a company like Nighthawk or others who do evaluation of images. And they found that using the WAN optimization greatly increased the efficiency, and they had up to an 80% reduction of the time that it took them to transmit their images. When should I use WAN optimization? When applications are performing poorly across the WAN. STEELHEAD and STEELHEAD Mobile provide remote office and mobile workers with application response times as if they were sitting in the corporate office. And we have that experience. I have that experience when I sit at home and work from home on the weekends kind of thing. Multiple applications oftentimes demand more than the bandwidth's provided, and so you remove 60 to 95% of the data, which makes you feel like you have, instead of a 1 meg circuit, feels like you have a 10 meg circuit. Servers reside in branches but belong in the data center. The situation of distributing servers in geographical diverse locations so that users can have better experiences can be mitigated and brought back to one central management because of the efficiencies that are offered through the WAN optimization. And then between data centers, if you have the disaster recovery centers where you're snap mirroring between or some other means of replicating between the two locations, it greatly enhances the throughput between those data centers for backup. So how can I get started? We are a partner with Riverbed, and they are an esteemed partner of ours. We've been working with them over a significant period of time now, and we work closely together. As Woody had mentioned earlier, we have the evaluation capabilities so that you can, we're eager to work with you to set up an eval where we can put a device at each end of a circuit, for example, and you can try it out for yourself. We can come out to your business, and we can do an online demonstration right there through your internet by going back and pulling files using our laptop-based WAN optimization, and we can demonstrate that for you. We have individual pricing models that we can provide. I mentioned there's that we can share with you according to your needs. And so you can go online as well to tell more at alaska.com. So with that, go back one. I skipped. Okay, questions and answers.
So let me jump back in and facilitate, and thank you to both Woody and Rod. Great presentation. Seeing some questions pop in. I think we've answered a couple already, specifically around STEELHEAD and Granite, as well as sort of the mobile application and how that works. If there's any follow-ups required, I'll ask you to chat again into the window if there are any other specific needs. I guess I'd ask, Rod, you just mentioned on the previous slide around the evaluation process. Any more details you could share on that?
Basically, we get together and look at what the resources are and what circuit size. The Riverbed STEELHEAD come in different models, and those models are based upon the number of flows, how many connections are made, like to the internet, and how much bandwidth is used, that type of thing. So we have to evaluate what the needs are, and then we can order that equipment, bring it out, install it, and do a 30-day test, that type of thing, and they can evaluate it.
How many of those ever come back?
None. We've had none that have returned. They've all purchased once they've experienced the riverbed optimization.
That's great. Got another question here. What type of improvement do you see with VMware View Remote Access? Any percentage improvement on average? That's a Woody question, or Rod jump in.
Yeah, obviously it's resting on the benefit of having an optimization and the fact that in the VMware it's all within the same appliance. Woody, do you have any other additional information on the advantages using the VMware as far as other than just the capability of not having multiple boxes to manage it?
Yeah, I don't. It's a very good question. We'll write that one down. What we do is we have a library of, it's like a performance hall of fame with a lot of different types of applications, and we have those screenshots where we show the before and after and the percentage improvement. So I don't have it off the top of my head, but we can get that and send it out.
We've written down that question here, and we will respond to that.
Okay.
Another question here we're getting popped up. Obviously, Rod, you shared an example of the investment required, but I think there's multiple Steelhead offerings. Are WAN optimization solutions expensive?
When you look at the overall, as we looked at the cost and as it's amortized out, initially, we can do it so there is not much a CapEx expense through amortization. We help that way. The overall benefit compared to bandwidth usage and experience, you definitely save money, and for the enhanced experience.
One of the other questions we got here popping up. Does WAN optimization have any impact on applications like video and voice?
Good point. And we didn't really address that here, and I think we need to clarify that. Video and voice is basically UDP traffic. When Woody was talking about the windowing and the back and forth chattiness, that's more along the TCP, data transport, and as well as the chattiness of applications. I'm going to send you information. Are you ready? Yes, I'm ready. Oh, here it comes. Did you get it? Yes, I got it. That back and forth chattiness is where we mitigate that with the riverbed optimization.
So the real-time applications, though, are more likely to be optimized as a result of reduction of
Exactly. So the benefit is that, UDP traffic, video and voice is real time, and we can't speed up how someone talks. It would sound funny. And so basically what we do is we clear out the bandwidth by minimizing the data traffic so there's plenty of bandwidth for voice and video.
Awesome. I've got one final question here, and if there are others, I encourage folks to chime in. One final question. Obviously, we shared a really long list of applications that can be optimized, but if folks have sort of specific applications they want to know if those can be optimized, what's the best way to find out? Is that a live trial? Is that emailing us at tellmemore@acsalaska.com?
Yeah, tell me more. And riverbed.com is a great resource. There's a number of white pages and information that can be pulled from there, as well as contacting us here at ACS. We'd be glad to work with any one of you in setting up evaluation and discussing. The most important thing is to get together and realize what the pain points are, what the needs are, and help see what would best fit what application would best fit be a solution for what the pain points are.
Okay, so good to know. With no further questions, I'm going to jump into an award opportunity here. We have an iPad. One of you will be lucky win, and I'm going to scroll through my list, and I see a name of David Gray. David, you are a lucky winner today. We will reach out to you in the next 24 hours for you to claim your prize. We can handle that to you. We'll figure out how to get that to you and what's most convenient for you. Other than that, I will just close this again with you can obviously go to our website. Happy to have you visit us there. We do have an email address through which any inquiries can be directed. That is tellmemore@acsalaska.com. If you ever have any sort of questions on WAN acceleration or anything else for that matter, we'd love to chat with you. So send your emails there. Otherwise, David will reach out to you. And those of you who attended, thank you very much again for your participation today. We really enjoy your interest in this solution. I think it's a great one for a lot of Alaskan businesses. And look forward to sharing more details in the future. You will get an email with this recorded version as well. And with that, thanks very much for joining. I hope everybody has a great day.